It was 20 years ago today. Host nation France winning its only World Cup political, which brings us to next Sunday in Moscow when Les Bleus square off against first-time finalists Croatia. What does this outcome and this tournament say about the state of the beautiful game and of a European continent that's featured all four semi-finalists? We'll talk feel-good factor, how much of it rubs off on leaders. Both President Emmanuel Macron and his Croatian counterpart, Kolinda Grabar-Kitarovic, will be sitting alongside host Vladimir Putin come Sunday in Moscow. More broadly, how do a nation's sporting results impact its psyche? Today in the France 24 debate, we are claiming that it is, yes, much more than just a game. And with us, France 24's Mark Owen, dressed appropriately for last night.
It's my tribute.
The news cycle's moved on, young man.
It's my tribute to Gareth Southgate, nonetheless.
Right.
Keeping the faith.
All right. Also joining us, she covered the World Cup up and down for a month. The former Moscow correspondent for French newspaper Libération, Véronica Dormant. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Ziad Liman, who is the publisher of Afrique magazine, who was with us when the tournament started and had at the time predicted that who would win the World Cup?
I said Brazil first, France second, so I'm still on track.
You're still on track, okay. You get second choices, I see. From Zagreb, Juraj Verdoljak, columnist with Telesport. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
The France 24 debate on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. The suburbs of the French city of Lille are a long way from Moscow. There, the suspense is over whether supply can meet demand at a local flag-making factory. The pressure is building, and in a French team that lost the final of Euro 2016 at home, well, nobody wants to fail at the final hurdle a second time 2 years later.
I've already had a taste of defeat, and it's not good. It's hard to swallow. I saw photos of the celebrations. It was extraordinary. We want to see that again. Players want to join in, jump up and down and sing with the whole of France. All of our fans, all our loved ones, everyone.
And before we go to our panel, let's go to Moscow. For a month, he's been regaling us with his daily column in the Financial Times. Simon Cooper, the author of Football Against the Enemy. Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
Listening there to the words of Paul Pogba, your thoughts on Sunday?
France favourites. I mean, they have the best squad in the tournament. They are well rested. They haven't had to play extra time. The Croatians have played 3 extra times. It's like playing a whole extra match. So France favourites, but matches in this tournament tend not to go to the favourites. That's the scary thing. In 2016 against Portugal, 2 years ago this week, as Pogba was saying, they were favourites too. So there must be a little bit of anxiety. But everyone in France, I think, has in their heads 98. Every World Cup is a repetition of past World Cups. And for the French, this World Cup is supposed to be the glorious summer, the golden age, the age before things went wrong with France.
Simon, it's also the age of globalization, right? And all the players, some of them on each side on the pitch on Sunday, play together in Spain, most notably. They all play in the great elite clubs of Europe. Why don't we have just all the teams playing the same kind of football?
To a large degree, they do. I mean, it's very hard to see their national styles anymore. France have adapted this rather defensive counter-attacking style designed to unleash the fastest striker in the world, Kylian Mbappe. It doesn't always create beautiful football, but here they are in the final. So it's not that we're seeing a French style against a Croatian style. And it's true, the players are they're the global elite. They're the 0.1%. They're people who are much more at home in first-class airport lounges than on the streets of Paris or Zagreb. They have more in common with each other than with us. But the World Cup is much more for the fans back home. That's where you'll find the emotion, the passion, not in the stadiums in Moscow or on the field in Moscow.
Hey, one final question. I remember 2 years ago here in France, you telling me you were a little bit disappointed by what you'd seen in terms of level of play at Euro 2016. How have you enjoyed the past month?
I mean, I've reconciled myself to the fact that these international tournaments, the football is less good than it is in the Champions League. Teams like Barcelona, Manchester City, Bayern are better than almost any team here. And I've got used to that. But the football's been more attacking here. Teams have played with less fear, more joy. Euro 2016 was a fantastically boring tournament, and this one hasn't been.
But Mark Owen is pining to ask you a question here. Go ahead, Mark.
Simon, hope you can hear me. I wonder what you thought about the England performance.
I thought they were a very decent passing team. They'd learned continental ways until last night against Croatia, when after taking the early lead, which England often does, they do what England's past teams always did. Instead of playing possession football, patient possession football, which we know they can, they reverted to English type. And they just lumped balls long, hoofed these clearances. And the result was you give Croatia, which is a very good passing team, the ball for practically an hour straight. And of course, Croatia scored. England did it to themselves. They're better than this. I was really disappointed by last night.
And how about the passing ability of the goalkeeper, Jordan Pickford? Because instead of just like...
Because Mark is a Everton fan.
Instead of just hoofing the ball as far as possible to Rosette, he was actually hoofing it very far and finding players.
Yes, but he shouldn't have had to hoof it. The defenders were so terrified in the second half of having the ball that when Pickford had it, they ran away from him and forced him to hoof. Instead of which, they should have done what all the world's leading teams do, is go to the keeper and say, give it to me a short pass. We'll build from the back. We've got all the time in the world. We're 1-0 up. And instead they played like, Wolverhampton Wanderers 1992. It was embarrassing. Not Pickford's fault. They did it to him.
Simon Cooper, many thanks for joining us there from Moscow. I want to ask Juraj Verdoliak. There you heard, a damning appraisal of the England performance. Were you surprised at 1-0 at how England handed the ball over to the Croatians?
It was really bizarre to see them play that way because it kind of resembled the scenario they had versus Colombia in a way. They kind of went so afraid to bottle it. They just panicked and gave the game away to Croatia, who turned over to aggression and used it very well to overturn the result.
And it shows actually that we have three teams, and I'll turn to you, Ziad Liman, showing mental toughness, right? You heard Simon Cooper talk about how football players, it's the global elite of football here, but you need that mental toughness, don't you, to win a tournament?
I don't know. I think it's we tend to forget that it's a professional sport also. I mean, these guys are trained physically, mentally, team spirit, playing together. So the best at all these factors win the cup. And then you can add 20% luck. When the ball touches the bar, just go 5 millimeters on the left or on the right. So I think it's very difficult to have lessons and say, these guys have team spirit, these guys... It's just a mix of everything. I mean, people are saying this team is young, but sometimes it's better to have more experienced guys. It's an
I suppose the advantage of youth is that you have...
Because let's just explain for our viewers here, France going into the tournament with the second youngest squad after Nigeria.
Exactly.
And the England team as well.
The England team is young.
Very young team too. In 4 years' time, they'll be approaching maturity. Maybe they'll be even better,
And sometimes history and sometimes local passion, local stories in your home country can pushes you to win something. I mean, it's just such a mixed... It's very, very difficult to have one thing spectacularly making the win.
Well, for France, there is this common thread, and it's embodied by the coach. The spirit of 1998, embodied by manager Didier Deschamps. Back then, he was the captain on the field of Les Bleus. He's aiming to join Brazil's Mario Zagallo and Germany's Franz Beckenbauer as the only three to lift the trophy, both as player and as manager. And Mark, you're wearing your Gareth Southgate waistcoat, and I've heard the England manager praised to the heavens. The French manager, we like we kind of like the beautiful game, and he's been criticized for sometimes being a little too staid.
We all want to see a 4-0 victory. We all want to see lots of great goals. We all want to see players performing amazing tricks. France needed to get perhaps a little bit more realistic about their approach to the game. But that's not to take away from the likes of Kylian Mbappe, who's capable of doing remarkable things at any stage in the game, and players who are very at ease on the ball and look good. So I wonder what people want really in terms of from France. You know, they've mission accomplished. France are in the final. They've played some great football. Okay, there's a little bit of professional sort of time wasting going on at some point, but that's been happening in football since the beginning, hasn't it? All the time,
Exactly.
People wasting time to sort of get through a game. So it's nothing new. It's just that, you know, maybe people expected more from France because of the quality that's on the pitch.
Veronica Dorman, this tournament, you heard Simon Cooper say he was surprised by the suspensefulness of it. The hosts were surprised as well by how exciting a month it's been.
The hosts were very surprised by the performance of their own team because nobody believed, and beginning by the team itself, nobody really believed that Russia would go anywhere out of the group, and especially not all the way to the quarterfinals. And as far as the atmosphere, the first few days were exciting, but the Russians themselves were watching what was going on and discovering this carnival that was growing, and then they realized that they were part of it and they were actually hosting it, and they had a responsibility also to make this feast happen. And then, as Russians always do, they unleashed everything and just threw themselves into the feast. And what you were saying about this chemistry that's very specific, the Russian team also started making magic on the field all of a sudden, probably because they felt supported, because they didn't know they could be a team until they started, you know, sinking. No, you don't say sinking in balls. You say, and they started winning, and so they won and they won and they won, and even that when they lost against Uruguay at some point, they didn't even feel it as a defeat. It was something that could also happen on the path to victory, and those are all new feelings for the Russian society and Russian sports.
So it's more than just a game for
it definitely became more than just a game because they've been writing a lot about it. Russian editors have been writing about the fact that the society as a whole started discovering all these new emotions and feeling normal because they knew
so
that...
can you put it back in a box once the final whistle is blown on Sunday night?
That's the big question, and they've been asking that question since the very first day because you can put anything back, or try to put anything back in a box in Russia, or at least the authorities can try to do that. But people have tasted to that freedom and then happiness, so...
It went both ways. I mean, I have a lot of friends who went to Russia for the first time in their life, and they discover something which is widely different from what they were expecting.
Exactly.
Beautiful stadiums, state-of-the-art stuff, security, very nice, welcoming Russians. They have this, you know, cold, icy picture of them. I mean, it goes both ways, and there's no way you can go out of such an event of that magnitude without something staying and being there for a while. Look at France, 1998, they won the cup, which is different, but it's still there 20 years later. And if you talk about Brazil, Brazil lives on victories that happened like 20 years earlier and 30 years earlier and 40 years earlier. So, I mean, it goes both ways. Sports, feeling, heart, it's a weird mixed.
England still living on 1966.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, life's never been better since 1966.
It's the year I was born. Veronica Dorman, who will the home side be supporting on Sunday?
Russians?
Who will they be supporting?
I don't know, because I've read everything and it's opposite. A lot of people are saying Croatia because there are brothers closer, but then I don't know. I can't tell.
Uri, have you got an opinion on that?
Regarding the support of Russians, or?
Yeah, of Russians, yeah.
Well, yeah. People always tend to believe that Croatia is closer to Russia than it really is. But I'd break it down due to the fact that both are Slavic nations, and perhaps people would seek some resemblance and the reason to support in that.
Also, they've been saying that they would rather have lost to the champion of the world than to anybody else. So they will support Croatia because it will be better for them to say that they lost to the world champion.
All right, after Tuesday's semi-final win against Belgium, Paris correspondent for The Economist, Sophie Petter, sent out this tweet, which we'll show you right now. There you have it, Emmanuel Macron, arms held high, with the caption, "This guy has all the luck." Do you agree with that? I mean, he did in a way.
So far, if they lose the final, you'll see the same tweet reversed. This guy is just bringing unlucky stuff. So, I mean, let's wait to the last second of the last game before anybody brings luck or anything.
No, but you covered last year this French presidential election where this incredible set of circumstances helps him on the road to power. Does he have? Will you say on Sunday night that he definitely has the Midas touch? First of
all, his numbers are tanking. So has all the luck. Well, he's getting into the tough side of his business. Elections in 1 year, in 2 years. A lot of people wondering whether he's the president of the rich, whether his program is middle-class based or just working for an elite. So that's first thing. And second thing, they have a final to win, which is, again, we don't know. It's going to be a weird weekend. It's 14th of July also.
Bastille Day.
Yeah, Bastille Day on Sunday. So it's going to be everything. History of France, revolution, presidents, game in Moscow. It's going to be crazy.
It's all coming together, isn't it?
It's all coming together.
Yeah. You can add one more thing to that list. Which is meeting Vladimir Putin. And at the NATO summit, the NATO summit that just concluded, one where alliance members again blasted Russia for its annexation of Crimea, involvement in Ukraine. Macron was asked about attending the World Cup final in the company of his Russian counterpart.
We cannot say that what has happened in Ukraine, what has happened in the United Kingdom in recent months, has brought serenity and calm. In the meantime, there will be an important meeting Sunday afternoon in Moscow, not on the economy, nor on collective security, but on sport. And we will be there. With no doubt, some anxiety, but with the will to bring back a World Cup and a second star.
Veronica Dorman, we've been talking a lot about Donald Trump's meeting the following day with Vladimir Putin in Helsinki. What about the one between Putin and Macron on Monday, rather, for Trump? On Sunday, what about that? Will it matter, or it's just...
I don't know, they might say that it's only sports, no politics, and I think they're meeting not only at the stadium. I think there's a meeting that's planned. I'm not sure whether Macron, for instance, will talk about Sentsov, the Ukrainian prisoner who is dying of a hunger strike right now in a Russian prison, there have been articles lately asking the president to address such issues when he will be in Moscow. I'm not sure he will do that. I don't know if that will be the moment.
Macron, they're mentioning Novichok and what's going on with Britain.
Well, he likes to say that he can talk openly to Putin, that they're on an equal stand, that Putin listens to him. We don't really know that for sure. We don't know if, and he may tell us that. He may even come out of that meeting and say that they have talked about all this. I don't think it's going to change anything because nothing has until now. So I don't really believe that there will be any kind of real shift after this encounter.
Ziad Liman, if you're a human rights activist, you say, you shouldn't, I mean, it's the second time in a week, of course, he'll be going to Russia. You shouldn't be honoring Russia with a visit at the time when they're accused of these things. And they're saying, no, it doesn't matter either way.
Neither of both issues are wrong. I mean, you remember China, Olympic Games, everybody was saying, we don't go to China. Sure, you go to China. How can you not go to China? I mean, if you're a head of state or if you're involved in world politics, how can a French president cannot attend the final of the World Cup? I think it could be even an opportunity. I mean, you're probably right. Nothing may come out of it. But if something, for any reason, if Putin wants to send some kind of a message, it's a good timing.
In everything they do, though, go to how Sochi was organised, how this has been organised, there is always this message saying, Russia first, almost Trump-esque, isn't it? Russia first, we'll organise this better, we'll make sure it works better, we'll do our best in terms of competition. And I think for Putin, it's been a major series of achievements, hasn't it? You know, you can tick every box really in the sense of how this has been organised and how it's all happened.
Unless, as Veronica says, you can't put back in a box the spontaneous enthusiasm that we witnessed during the tournament.
They'll tap into that, though, with the use of volunteers, because the number of volunteers they got sort of working on the competition is massive, isn't it? I understand this is part of Russian life to get people to volunteer to do things. Is that a way of massaging the unemployment statistics or something?
No, not really. I mean, it's also a FIFA thing. I mean, they needed people, and they had a lot of youth who were ready to do that and who were interested in doing that. But it's more about people realizing that they, encountering all these other people who came to their country and realizing that they're just the same. And Russians tend to be, we forget that the country has been closing up in the past years, and not only politically, but even for people travel less because of economical problems, because of all this, you know, this discourse of fear, of enemies surrounding us. And so this eruption of the outside world on the streets, not only of Moscow, but more importantly, of cities like Volgograd, of Nizhny Novgorod, where tourists don't go massively. And so Russians looking at these guys and saying, okay, you're wearing a Mexican hat, but I'm almost just like you, besides the hat. And we can party together and we can dance together. And you think I'm nice? Nobody ever told me I was nice. And nobody ever said I was. And they were surprised themselves by how normal they were and how much people liked them. And that is not going anywhere. Hopefully that's not going anywhere. But that can also lead to turmoil later on, because I don't think that all these people who are dancing on the streets for football will go massively to protest, but they will still have a sense of, they forgot that they have the right to want to feel normal, and that's something that has been.
And they'll want a better deal. They'll want to get more money, more products, more choice.
Normal life.
That's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the thing, I suppose.
If you look at all the World Cups, they didn't bring. Most of them, they didn't bring some sort of miraculous change.
Argentina 1978, some say that the opening up to the rest of the world...
It took time.
It goes both ways. I mean, on the other hand, we sent all the teams to Argentina, and it was held by the dictatorship, military dictatorship. They fall after, and probably because of the Falklands.
It was the Falklands crisis.
More than the World Cup, where everybody said, okay, we can do it with the generals. If you look at Brazil, didn't change much of anything socially or politically.
And you could make the same point about France because in 1998, there's this black-blanc-beur feeling that we talk about, and then the far right makes it to the second round of the presidential election.
The issues about immigration and Frenchness and what it means to being French and immigration are even more tense today than they were 20 years ago. So it doesn't change radically something. It can bring a surge, a moment.
Ziad Liman, how political is the French national team? I ask you the question because if you think back the past decades, right, you've had obviously 1998, which was not capitalized upon by the government in power at the next election.
There was if I remember well, there was cohabitation.
Cohabitation. So it was the center left that was in power.
And Lionel Jospin, prime minister.
Then there was...
Actually, Chirac got a huge political boost because he was the one who most embodied the French team, and he was the guy having the beer with the fans, and he had this party at the Élysée, if you remember, and he incarnated the stuff. Then there was Jospin, who's like, as I said, some sort of Russian cold fish, and not very,
And then there's 2010, when there's that players' strike, and the French team has a meltdown. All the politicians, the tournament's taking place in South Africa, but all the politicians here weighing in on it.
No, not all. François Hollande, which sometimes says meaningful stuff, said we should take care of involving politics with football. And I think the 2010 event was absolutely disastrous because some ministers and Nicolas Sarkozy and his Minister of Sport, they start giving lessons about those big like mafia players in the team scaring the younger one, and we went back into those banlieue stories. I mean, that was just a mess, and it was just that the team spirit was broken. That team was not good, and end of it.
And it had an impact on the psyche, on France's morale.
Look at 2006, because people overlook the 2006 story. That was probably the best team ever in France. The generation of 98 becoming mature, and they had the best team ever, and they lost the final. Why? Probably also because the icon, Zinedine Zidane, defended his honor some way and just put his head onto an Italian
Headbutted
Marco Materazzi.
Marco Materazzi.
And so, what does it mean? Doesn't know. It's sports. It's men playing football on the field also.
Mark Owen, as an Englishman in Paris, as an Englishman in Paris, wearing a waistcoat, what do you think of the French relationship to sports and to football? Because it's very different from the one in England.
Two issues in the question.
Two issues in the question, but what I discovered when I came to live in France was that the attitude between the players on the pitch is very different. I played sort of amateur level in the UK, came over here, signed up for a team, and the atmosphere was extremely strange. I mean, I've been used to sort of great camaraderie. You get on the pitch, you support each other. Afterwards, you all have a drink together, sometimes even beer. But this lot, it was all like you turn up, you like.
But that's your experience as a player. But what about the relationship between fans and their national team?
But it transposes from that. You talk badly about one another, then you go away. What I've noticed here in France is that there's a lot of support before the game when perhaps they might win. The minute it starts to turn, that support becomes criticism, it becomes carping.
It's not the same in England.
It's got to go a long, long way along the road before they turn around and start singing "What a load of rubbish." They can, and they will, but it needs to go a long way down the road. Whereas in France, it can turn very quickly.
How about in Croatia?
Well, politics and football always go hand in hand in Croatia. It's been ever since Croatia actually became a country. Our first president, Franjo Tuđman, used to say that the athletes are the best ambassadors of the country. And a lot of politicians actually embrace that thought and use football as a means of self-promotion or stating their support for just like regular folks. It's the same basically now.
Well, let's talk about that. We have some images. To prove it. Croatia's president, like Macron, making plenty of political hay out of her side's achievements. Kolinda Grabar-Kitarovic, who wore her national team's jersey, celebrated in the dressing room alongside the players after Russia versus Croatia. We can perhaps show images of her doing so.
These images are great, aren't they?
Those are the images from Zagreb.
I've never seen a leader. I know what you're talking about completely. I've never seen a leader do what she did in terms of being in the dressing room, sort of there, wearing the shirt. Sort of, it's amazing stuff. And if she doesn't get re-elected for the next two elections, I don't think there's any justice in what's going on. I couldn't see Macron doing that though. Could you?
Wearing the team jersey.
There's a tradition.
Embracing the players.
There's a tradition in France. The president goes to the training camp before the opening of the World Cup, brings the support of the nation, and it's very official, cameras and everything, but he doesn't discuss sports. He just go and say, wish you luck, and you'll be good, and we're all behind you. So it's kind of
the same.
President Grabar-Kitarovic, who was in the dressing room wearing the jersey, embracing the players.
There she is.
And she watched the match, the quarterfinal match, in the VIP box alongside the current executive director of the Croatian FA, who, by the way, was sentenced last month to 3 years in prison on a set of charges involving Dinamo Zagreb, most notably under-the-table commissions for the transfer of star players Luka Modric, Dejan Lovren. Juraj Vrodilak, you write in The Independent that the biggest name in that trial is Zratko Mamic. Explain who he is.
He is the former executive of Dinamo Zagreb, and what most people consider to be, and it is a legit point, that he is the most powerful figure in Croatian football. He was involved in the transfers dealings when he was in Dinamo officially in Dinamo Zagreb, and most prominent players that he sold from Dinamo were actually Luka Modric and Dejan Lovren. You have Mateo Kovacic in this team as well. Šime Vrsaljko was also a member of Dinamo Zagreb, Mario Mandžukić as well. But the Mamić trial actually divided the country and divided the sets of fans due to the fact that Luka Modric and Dejan Lovren could point out the irregularities in Croatian football through that trial, but instead chose to held back of Zratko Mamić himself.
And will the result on Sunday affect either way the president?
Well, I highly doubt it. I mean, there was no. Vrbanovic himself actually said that when asked about the result, he mentioned the fact that people should not break their heads over his trial or over the talk of about Zdravko Mamic, but instead embrace this great moment and great achievement. That's one of the things, and a really important talking point when it comes to Croatian football. The division that fans are feeling, even in this moment, even when Croatia has this great achievement, there's a sense of divide between the fans, and it's really weird to follow that development on social media, for example, where on one hand you have this euphoric messages saying, yeah, we're going to go and win the World Cup, and on the other hand you have people saying, like, I cannot fully embrace this amazing success, and this makes us really sad and angry, and it's a bizarre situation.
Mark Owen, let's talk about this Croatia team, and it's surprised everyone. They seemed out of gas in the first half against England, and then they once again play extra time, third match in a row, come back to win. Yesterday at the same time, we were talking about having Modric for Player of the Year, for Ballon d'Or.
I think Luka Modric is an amazing player, and the way that he's making the side tick is phenomenal. Half-time yesterday, you're right, Croatia looked like they were finished. When we spoke to our correspondent in Zagreb, who said everybody was going home, going away from the big screen, writing off the game completely. The second half, of course, they come out, and it's a completely different Croatia side. I don't know what they put in the half-time tea, but it must be good stuff. No, seriously speaking, you know, the ultra-professional, they play in great clubs. They are very good players. Perisic, in particular, impressed me. Remarkable player. Modric is fantastic. Mandzukic, the centre-forward who scored the winning goal, he's got one of those faces. He always looks like he's bought a coffee with a €50 note, and he's been given the change from 10, doesn't he? Like, he always looks very hard done to. And then all of a sudden, and he looks tired, and he looks like he can't run. Then the ball comes, bing, and he's got it, and he scores. Remarkable player. Very professional. I think France have a big problem on Sunday coping with this team.
Because of the experience.
Because of the experience, because of the know-how, the ability on the pitch to know what to do, the right decisions, the right places, that kind of, and the knowledge of players. They know each other so well too.
Ziad Liman? You're serene, as the French say.
I'm not serene. I'll wait until the last minute, last second of that game. We've seen goals at the 90th minute in this World Cup.
I hope France win.
We've seen situation like
so youth will beat experience, is what you're saying on Sunday.
I don't know. I think talent, luck, moment, karma, cosmos.
They all count. They all count.
It's a final game. Everything's going to count. And the
Macron will be there too.
The weather.
12th man.
Too hot, not too hot. Well, we don't know. We'll see.
Who's the player on the French team that'll make the difference each time? And yeah, as Mark was saying, the French press tends to build certain players up and then tear them down. Who's the player you're going to be watching Sunday?
They have a great goalkeeper, which, I mean, he saved a couple of goals in crucial moments. They have a very good, very, very good defense, which is able to score goals also with Sia Umtiti. I don't know. I mean, it's just. I think it's a movement.
For me, it's Paul Pogba. If Pogba plays well, if he functions well, if he ticks along, everything will build from there. That's my feeling. I think if he plays well, France could win it.
Uri, who's the player that you fear the most on the French side?
Well, I'm fearing Kylian Mbappe's pace, because Croatia really has trouble defending the counter-attacks. They don't have a slow back line, but they have trouble being caught out. And I think Mbappe, in that term, is the player they have to fear the most. Obviously, France is full of brilliant individuals, and it's hard to point out a single player. But if you ask me, I would fear Kylian Mbappe, because you could see how Croatia has trouble coping with players who are adept on changing the pace very quickly and to receive the ball either in transition or either on set defense, like Raheem Sterling last night was particularly good in the first half, and he really troubled Croatia defenders up until the moment where England basically stopped playing. So yeah, I think Mbappe is a similar threat to Croatia's defense, and they'll have to be very careful of him.
Veronica Dorman, who's the player on the French side who's captured your imagination, let's say, over the past month?
Oh my God, can I not answer that question, please? Thank you.
Where will you be watching the match?
Where?
Yeah.
I haven't decided yet. Probably on the streets, because I think that's where the fun will be. So maybe in some local bar with all the neighbors.
All right, and finally, before we go, just sparing a thought for the English, who, yes, it has been 52 years. Marco, and I wanted to show you this cartoon that was published in the Daily Telegraph by Matt. There you have the sportscaster saying, quote, "Mrs. May says it was a good outcome and gave us most of what we wanted." An allusion, of course, to
Brexit.
To Brexit and
Brexit
her being always on message, it seems. And you see the scoreline behind there. How much did England need to, quote, bring it home?
Oh, football's coming home. Nobody in England expected England to do well. Nobody expected England to get through to the semi-finals. So what's happened is a bonus. It's a massive bonus. You know, when Gareth Southgate got the job as England manager, there was no one else around to take it. There'd been the scandal over Sam Allardyce. He'd been sacked. Southgate was the last man standing. He got the job because of that. So there he is, and no one's given them a chance of doing anything. So they get in, they get through that stage, they win the penalty shootout for the first time ever. Wow, you'd think we won the World Cup. But, you know, it's one of these things that just builds and builds and builds. They got to the semis. I think basically people are happy that they made it that far. And basically, you know, gave English football a good name that it deserves.
All right, and we'll of course be watching the third place match, which will be taking place Saturday against Belgium before the big one on Sunday. We'll have special
you
coverage.
Might finish up fourth.
And Ziad Liman, I want to thank you. I want to thank Marco and Veronica Dorman. I also want to thank Juraj Verdoljak for joining us from Zagreb. Best of luck to your side, and stay with us because the World Cup Daily is next. Simon Harding will have the latest.